But I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order contingent on the Albemarle County Continuity of Government Ordinance that's allowing for us to have this meeting in the hybrid format, allowing for remote and in-person participation with some physically congregated there at Northside. Thank you all very much for joining us. I hope we can keep this efficient so we can all move on to our vacation or busy work week before we get to vacation. David, before we get to announcements, do we have any public comment?
It doesn't look like we do. There are only 3 attendees and they are all staff members. If the staff member need to make a public or would like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand. Or anybody in the room, any public comment? So I don't believe we have any public comment today, Thomas.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any announcements anybody would like to make? I'd just like to say thank you all for being here. I appreciate you very much. Appreciate your time and appreciate your commitment here. Thank you for everything you're doing. Wendy, yes, I see your hand up.
Yes, just quickly, I need to communicate with David and Michael. And my apologies, but do you have any time at David to bring up the tech committee meeting?
Sure, we can
End of the meeting.
Yeah, do you want to we can bring it up maybe in other matters and try to schedule a meeting at that point?
Okay, great. Yeah, I've been out of commission, so fine. That'd be great. Thank you. And,
thank you.
I can't see, is Tony on?
No,
My
Tony.
apologies to sending the email to the wrong trust.
Tony's on vacation. I think he's at the beach. He'll be okay.
Okay. Okay, so
you.
Mike's there. We'll figure it out. And Jim. Okay. Thank you.
Just remind me when we get there an agenda if we need to make room for that conversation. And I'm sorry, I skipped. Can we make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Okay, with that out of the way, we'll move on then to continuing education. Thank you very much, Meredith, for joining us today. David, is there anything you want to say to set this up?
I would just like to invite Meredith to come up and give a run through of the new staff training plan. Meredith is a member of JMRL's training committee, which was one of the 3 newly formed committees as of 2 years ago now. And one of the first things the training committee did was carve out a subcommittee to work on the staff training plan. I'm sure Meredith will tell you. I think Sierra was on it as well. And one other person, Megan England, right, who no longer works at JMRL. So Meredith is going to present that plan briefly to you all and take any questions. So I'm going to share my screen.
Yes, I gave David some slides to look at, so you don't have to look at, well, you wouldn't see my face anyway from the camera. But, so yes, I am Meredith here to represent the training committee and our recent efforts to update the staff training plan. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And we did start working on this when the committee was created in 2019. We wanted to address outdated training offerings and be more clear with both employees and supervisors about the procedures and the opportunities that JMRL had to our availability, but it wasn't always clear what we had and they needed to be updated. We wanted to have a program that encouraged growth and development of our individual workers and also the organization as a whole. Slide, please. And you'll see that if you look through the 5-year plan, that this aligns with Objective 5, Goal 3. As we were,
Boy, this is just a great technology day, huh? Present.
There we go. It's honestly just a picture of the 5-year plan goal next.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Look, there it is. Staff training plan.
Thank you.
Plan. And as we were looking at what we already had in place and how best to present this to staff, we were thinking of a few different situations, types of types of training need that we wanted to address. User experience folks would call these stories, and we came up with about 5 different stories. And the first one was a new employee, new to JMRL, or new to a different role within the organization, had been promoted or moved jobs. What did they need to know, and where can they go for new knowledge? Slide, please. And there were inconsistencies across the branches and departments about the orientations that were given to new employees. So we wanted to make sure that this was consistent, everyone's getting the same information. We developed a checklist of different things that they should go through in order to get all of the information they would need to be a successful new employee at JMRL. We codified that orientation sessions, and we made these checklists that they could follow and their supervisor could follow to make sure that they get what they need. And the second situation was as an individual who had been employed at JMRL for several years. They were comfortable in the position, but maybe they wanted to learn more about their own area of library service or a different area of library service, or develop in another way, professionally or personally. And we wanted them to have one place they could see all of the different training opportunities that we had identified as good options. They were either offered in-house through JMRL staff, from city HR, from outside agencies. We wanted one place for them to look. So we made up a course catalog, if you will. And this is linked all in one document on our intranet and in the Google shared drive. And the way we set it up works with these checklists as well. So each one of those blue lines is a link to the place in the course catalog. If you could, next slide, please. To the individual listing. So for instance, I need Circulation 101. Either I'm a new employee or I've been here for a while and I want to make sure that I'm up to date on all the policies and procedures about circulation. So I want to take this course. Each course listing we standardized so that we could have the same information relevant to the person who was looking at the listing. The projected outcomes of the course, who it was meant for, who to contact with any questions about it, who was responsible for giving it. And it's also a place for us to keep course materials. So like training checklists, slides, archived videos, if they're available. We're going to start pushing everything in one place. We had these things before, but this was a chance to update to, as I said, make consistent. And we checked with all the department heads to make sure that the listings were up to date. If I don't skip to my script, I go on a tangent. So as I said, yes, those course listings are things that are offered in-house by JMRL managers or department heads or other staff members, city HR, outside organizations. We make reference to the employee assistant program, which does have professional development or personal development opportunities, and continuing ed from the state library. And we made this flexible so that we could add in as we found things and as needs changed. So if an employee is in their position and they want to, they could browse through the course catalog, or they can jump through the key terms that we put in these tracks. So if I'm in a public service position and I want to see all of the training related to public service, I could look for those little tags in there. This would be useful for an employee, but also for a supervisor who has an employee who is struggling or excelling and needs to grow. They can look through this course catalog. This was the third story as a supervisor for an individual employee. It comes around to assessment time, and we find that we need to make up some training hours, or we really want an employee to grow in a certain, encourage their growth in a certain direction. We can look through the course catalog. We wanted to encourage supervisors to look through this regularly because we want to emphasize the fact that we are giving our employees, that they should be giving their employees the time and space to beyond their daily tasks to engage in these development activities. And I just mentioned, as a side note, screen please, the training requirements. So JMRL does require that its employees have a certain number of training hours a year in alignment with state standards. And these hours are tracked as part of our employee assessment process. For many staff, most of the required hours are going to be met if they attend the regional in-service day in the fall and their branch in-service day, excuse me, in the spring. Those are two built-in days when all staff can focus on development as a team, and how the rest of the hours are fulfilled are up to the employee and their supervisor. whether they're following the suggested checklists that we have, or if they're going off on their own to find what they need. The fourth story that we had was a supervisor, not for an individual, but for a team. I just mentioned the in-service day slide, please. So the supervisors, branch managers are responsible for making their branch in-service days. This was the regional in-service day this past year. And we wanted to make sure that they had a bunch of different courses available to them if they needed to grow their team in a specific direction. So we're listing these, and also the outside contacts. When we find a really good organization or a presenter who can present on a topic, we'll be keeping track of those contacts. So if a group leader later on wants to contact them and offer it again, or offer a related training, they'll have that all in one place. We also, in this section, we tagged it good for groups. We also were listing ideas for field trips. Some branches have gone to the state library, local historical societies, other community organizations, and listings for that kind of thing. That was sort of sidelined. We were working on this in late 2019 and early 2020. So hopefully, as things open up again and we can gather as groups, we'll continue growing that section when we travel more. We're also listing here conferences and professional organization membership, again, as just another way of pursuing professional development. And the last situation we wanted to address is the new manager responsible for giving training. So you notice in that listing, of course, it was who was responsible for giving this training. A lot of the offerings we list in the course catalog are offered in-house. So for instance, the required training on circulation software, local practices like my collection inventory procedures. We needed to delineate who's responsible for that. Excuse me. So the folks in those roles knew what's expected for them. In the last couple of years, we have had a lot of manager turnover. And so making sure that the institutional knowledge is carried on and the same level of baseline training is offered in those departments, that's crucial. And so a new manager can look through the listings that are related to their position, see whatever course materials we've gathered from the past, and also they'll probably have new ideas to go forward. But they'll have a baseline of what we were already offering. And excuse me, I should have brought some water. As we developed with Japan, we look forward to revisiting course offerings regularly to update them. So this was developed, designed to be flexible and continuously reviewed for current needs. Slide, please. We also wanted a place where all of the questions about policy and forms and all of the bureaucracy surrounding training could be answered. So all of the forms and procedures are linked from this list, how to request training, how to request reimbursement from travel or registration fees, what to do after your training in terms of filling out an evaluation. So they're all in one place for an employee to make sure they have the right thing. So we did this, and we had a solid draft ready to unveil in early 2020, and we did unveil it to the staff at the regional in-service in 2020, in fall of 2020. But again, we still, I think, call it a draft because it is designed to be continuously reviewed and added to. But because we added that flexibility in, we were able to pivot in early 2020 and add in a lot of online trainings and make sure that staff had lists of resources they could use when they were sidelined from public service or when needs drastically changed or their roles changed. Slide, please. And we were able to highlight resources, gather them from the staff. So for instance, personal health and safety and public service in the time of COVID. We were also adapted existing sessions to the Zoom environment. So all of the training that we were already giving in-house, gathering people at a branch and talking to them, a lot of them have been transitioned to online learning, which allows for flexibility. We can have staff from different branches attend at a different time without the travel time. And it also allows us to record more easily. So we can archive sessions so they don't have to be attend at the one time. They can fit into their schedule. So that's actually a silver lining is to the Zoom is that it allows more flexibility. Slide, please. And we've also built in a way for, we don't want this to be a two-way street, listing a course catalog and saying, here's what there is. We wanted feedback from the staff. So we've actively, over the last couple of years, excuse me, solicited suggestions if an employee takes a webinar or a training that they found useful and want to share it with the staff. We're collecting those, and we're still finding the best way to present them, but we do have them scattered across the internet and the Google Share Docs at this point. We are folding them into one place. And we also started this form, which is if a staff member wants to learn something but can't quite find the right resource on their own and doesn't see it listed in our course catalog, they can suggest that the training committee pursue this. I would like to learn about X. I don't see a training related to X, and we will look for it. We'll use all of our group resources to find and satisfy that need. Slide, please. In addition, we are working with the other two recently formed committees that David mentioned, the Customer Service Committee and the Equity Committee, to develop more training resources related to those topics specifically. And already the Equity Committee has a section in the monthly staff newsletter where they share new EDI related resources, and we collect them together to keep a record of those so that folks can look back at them. We're going to work with the new IT staff to make sure that technology related training is up to date and relevant. And this is aligned with goals that they'll be looking at in the technology plan. And the training committee can help provide access to those resources as they're developed. And we also have plans to develop another set of checklists. The core competencies are being revised. And we want folks to be able to, as they're going through the competencies, if there is a specific topic, excuse me, that they want to gain proficiency in or get better at, they'll have specific trainings tied to those. So it'll just be a little bit easier for them to find those. So those are our goals. Slide, please. Back to the intro, the staff training program, which again, this is the one stop. And of course, we look forward to folding in documentation on the burgeoning cross-training program that you all learned about recently that will be implemented within the next year. So that will also be folded into this. And we continue to seek resources and to provide the environment that folks can take advantage of those resources. I welcome questions.
I just want to say thank you so much. I want to recognize that this curriculum and the supporting tools you have around it, like that FAQ document and the suggestion box, this represents a huge amount of coordination and organization. So to you and all of the other staff members who are behind this, thank you. I think it's incredible and essential to making sure that our staff stays as amazing as they are. Wendy, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I also want to echo the thank you. Everything looks just so well organized, and the added bonus, as you call the silver lining, is being able to offer at any time the person desires. But I did have one question that related to the slide where you had one was the number of, well, related to the number of hours. Said everyone would have 2 hours, and then when listed the professionals and paraprofessionals requirements of number of in-service hours during the year. I was wondering, and then you said they may meet that required number of hours by attaining an in-service. And yes, that slide.
Most of
so
the
if the oh, okay, most of them. So if they let's just take the 8 hours for the paraprofessional, somebody 5 to 19 hours a week. they would get some of those from attending the in-service, and then the others, they would, how does that relate to the 2-hour?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the 2 hours comes from. But the in-service
Okay, I
days,
thought at the
sorry?
beginning, I thought early, it said every year there would be a 2-hour.
oh, 2 in-service days.
Maybe the cross-training.
Oh, the yes,
Okay,
that
I
is
missed-
true. In
I
the cross-training plan, we are adding a requirement for 2 hours of cross-training. So that would be in addition to the
Oh,
in-service
okay.
days. So if you do everything we're requiring of you, you get 16 hours of in-service and 2 hours of cross-training. Yes.
Within that, so it would just be the 2 hours is within the 16 or within the 8.
Cross-training
Was it-
doesn't happen on in-service day, so they're separate from in-service day. It's somewhere else in the year.
It's
Okay,
additional to that 16.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Is it in addition to the 16, you get another 2 hours of cross-training?
That's correct, yes, yeah. That's
Oh.
a more individual, the cross-training plan is for an individual going to a place or to a different department and getting 2 hours. And the in-service days are more team group events where everybody gathers.
Right, yeah, I was more interested in the numbers and the requirements, not the
Sure.
in-service. I was just
Yeah.
wondering, okay, so if it's, yeah, okay. And I only asked because when I was working with someone at the library, there was a frustration because several of the other folks did not have the technology skills. And I wanted to see how that, played in, but I love the first part where you could do the different levels and regroup, kind of put them in place. I just was trying to figure out how many hours were actually required of folks, but now I get it. It's the cross-training is in addition to, okay.
Yeah, and I think that I highlighted the in-service and I should have added the cross-training in as those required hours above which, because those are the training opportunities that are given to the employee. They don't have to plan to find that on their own, or their supervisor doesn't have to find it. We provide that for them and say, here, take advantage of this and you'll get a lot of your required hours. And then after that, if you still need more, find something that speaks to you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to get these in order and to the board members there in person. Appreciate that. I'll make a call at the end here for you. But I think I saw Lisa's hand go up right after Wendy there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling on me. I just wanted to say, Meredith, I really think this is an excellent overview, and I really appreciate, as Thomas was saying, all of the work that your team has put into this. I was wondering about what I like about it is the mix and match and what feels like a lot of flexibility in terms of the stuff that you provide, as well as the stuff that folks can pursue on their own. I also really liked the opportunity for people to suggest trainings, right? Things that they might be interested in and learning more about. Could you talk a little bit about if there has been any, like, have you, I get, all things seem to have appeared for a reason. Have there been ways that, despite how broad the offerings seem to be, that there were things that were overlooked, and therefore this type of, openness is a boon for the organization? Like, has someone ever come to say, oh, wow, I wish I had more understanding of blank, blank, blank. And then this gives them the opportunity to fill that into a form, and actually they could then get the benefit of it.
Absolutely. We want to give that opportunity. I'm not sure if anybody has taken us up on the option. That form goes to the head of the training committee. And so Haley could answer if there has been, and then she would bring to the committee saying, we can find training for specific things, or Haley is so proactive enough that she would probably also just find a webinar and hand it to the person. But But it does, I hope that as we go forward and collect that feedback, we would find those gaps of the topics that we don't think of, but another member of staff would say, yes, this really is a good need. And if we have enough people in one topic, that's clearly demonstrating that we need to develop a curriculum around that topic.
I think that was what I was asking. I guess I didn't realize that the form only went to members of the committee. I thought that this, would you see a difficulty or a reason not to disseminate that form more widely to everybody who has to do some training?
Yeah, it's available to all JMRL staff.
Oh, okay, okay.
And we remind them of it at any training possibility, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again for the work.
Yeah, sure. And we also, at the end of every in-service day, we send around surveys of, how did that go for you? Was there something you were hoping to get that you didn't get? And we take that feedback and fold it into future offerings. David was gonna.
I was just going to add, Lisa, that maybe similar to that question is that this whole plan is designed to fill a gap that staff noticed where the requirements for training that Wendy was looking at were in place based on those state standards for a long time. And I was talking with a lot of staff and a lot of managers and hearing that frequently around evaluation time, there's this mad scramble, everybody's waiting till the last minute to get their requirements done. And, sometimes because of that requirement, staff weren't necessarily matching training to the things that they needed in order to do their job or in order to better themselves in their profession. They were just matching their training to what was available in that last, month or 2 months or whatnot before the evaluation. So I think that a lot of this training plan was built on the idea that here are these 5 tracks, and throughout the year, you can be able to pick and choose rather than having to, at the last minute, take whatever's available.
That seems like a great improvement. Alita, thank you for your patience.
Oh, that's quite all right. I think I forgot my question, but no, I was wondering about the how do you determine the competency of, if you took this training, is there some measure of competency that's built into the training module, or say, oh, you need to take this again?
I think that would depend on the type of training and the reason that they were taking it. I think for a lot of our in-house offerings, it's really they're related to job, outcomes. So if the person then improves in their job skills, between them and their supervisor, they would understand that they've improved. And if they didn't, that would be addressed. But there's such a range, it's hard to answer because there's such a range of training offerings in this course catalog, from I am giving an orientation to the collection inventory procedures, which is just a specific skill to learn. Or there are also wellness tracks and more professional development, customer service tracks. And so I think it would be up to the technology tracks. Back to what Wendy was saying about frustration with technology skills, we hope that will be addressed somewhat in the new technology competencies or updated technology competencies, so that between a supervisor and an employee, they could work out where they were lacking in proficiency and how to get them up to, success.
Mm-hmm.
And I interrupted myself, is that there's such a range of offerings that it is hard to answer. Some of them, yes, there are courses we could take with continuing ed through state library that have little questions at the end to make sure that you've learned what you were supposed to learn. But some of them are more discussion panels where you're, just developing your knowledge. So it's hard to say.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
How accessible is the intranet for staff members? I mean, I've worked in places where I've worked for a year, and then they say, oh, we have this intranet thing, and you don't know how to get there, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Is this something that they see when they log in, or they do their hours, or how would they connect with that?
That's a good question, and it's something we struggled with in the past, but I think we're getting better at it, especially with the new orientation, is that everyone's introduced to the intranet right away and saying, this is the place you go to answer your questions. Sarah, our new web what is her title?
Digital services.
Digital Services Manager, has done good work in organizing it so that the information there is findable. And I think we are getting the message out that that's the first place to go.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Well, Meredith, thank you so much again for this wonderful presentation, and thank you all trustees for your questions. I think we got a lot out of that.
Thank you, Meredith.
And Kathy, let me just recognize you here, say thank you for your persistence. I'm glad that you could join us.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move along in the agenda here to our Budget Committee report.
So since the chair of the Budget Committee is not here, Thomas, it's Tony. I believe he asked Lisa to stand in for him briefly here.
Yes, I have been briefly, I will be standing in for Tony, and I cannot do such a thing justice. I will just do my part. The Budget Committee met, and I think it was a good meeting. We asked David some, really great questions, but he and the colleague that he brought to the meeting had done a fantastic job. And so it seemed like it was a straightforward, I believe, conversation. It wasn't anything that felt like contentious. There are some things that I believe, thank you so much, AJ Mosley. Thank you so much. AJ Mosley and David did a wonderful job organizing everything and explaining, the things that budgets normally do. And we ended up approving it with no recommendations, no caveats or anything. And so I think we're ready to proceed and move forward. And now as a board, we can go and reach out and advocate in the ways that we should be doing, right, to our various jurisdictions to make sure that the library gets the funding that it needs. David, is this also, am I giving a good understanding of what, because, you were there. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I think the homework that you had was to let the board know that the Budget Committee is recommending that the full board adopt the budget. So we can now discuss it as the full board can discuss it.
Yes, that was it exactly. That we approved it and we're ready to bring it to the team to see what you all think as well. So.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And I want to apologize sincerely to everybody that I wasn't able to be at that meeting. I know that's one of the most important ones we have. And we had a bit of a complicated week here in Scottsdale that I'll get to later in the meeting when I have a little thing. But I'm very sorry for that. But thank you so much for all the work that you guys have put into that, and David and AJ as well. And David, you had something additionally, I believe, that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, everybody should have a copy of the proposed budget in the packet for today. 25-page packet.
Yeah. This right here is start video. That's a problem. Well, how are you going to get on the screen?
Okay. So I think what I wanted to point out, Thomas, was the bottom line on the grid sheet here, which is page 3 of this proposed budget, that this does reflect a few things. You can see the less minimum wage adjustment credit. So this is the funding that JMRL is going to dip into its general fund in order to support year 1 of the minimum wage adjustment that the full board heard about from the personnel committee over the last few months. So it does reflect a credit that we're going to give to each jurisdiction in order to make that plan a reality. I think the bottom line, though, is you can see a disparity, a wide variety in the percent change and the dollar change per jurisdiction. So I sent an email out to have people be on the lookout for that. This budget accomplishes JMRL's goals for fiscal year 23. It does reflect a statistical lean towards Albemarle, which is directly impacted by COVID. Their usage of the Albemarle County went up during fiscal year 21. The way that these costs are shared largely here between all 5 jurisdictions for regional costs, And then between Charlottesville and Albemarle for the operations of the Central, Gordon, and Northside branches was affected by a usage by Albemarle patrons, which was above the normal usage rate. We do take a 3-year average of those, so that shows how widely things swung that way last year, that it would affect the overall outcome so much. The lion's share of materials from the shared Charlottesville and Albemarle facilities were checked out to Albemarle patrons. So Albemarle County is aware that JMRL is going to be coming to them with this minimum wage adjustment. We've been talking to county staff about this for about 18 months now. And I believe that they would support that. They have supported that for their own staff and for the schools, Albemarle County school staff, which relies on their HR department for that. Rent is also up for Northside for next year based on the calculations that they use there. So we can go through and look at the individual branches if you'd like, but I just wanted to make, especially the Albemarle trustees, aware of that, the difference there, where it's a large amount we're going back to Albemarle County for, but as the largest funder and the largest user, and the fact that JMRL did take flat funding in the first year of COVID response, so fiscal year 21, I believe makes this a situation that the Board of Supervisors will understand and that the county staff will understand, but we're just going to have to make sure we walk through the paces with them and show them why their share of cost is up over their peers at JMRL. So are there any questions about that, especially from any Albemarle trustees?
Thank you, David. I know we had an opportunity right after the meeting to discuss this, and as I said then, I think that this is pretty straightforward, that we approach Albemarle and argue for it as a COVID expense, like you say. They have a lot of COVID related funding that I'm sure lots of departments are in need of, but in the grand scheme of $13 million, this doesn't seem that outrageous, and I hope they feel the same.
Are there any questions about the rest of the individual branches or from any other trustees? Mike, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, an interesting note from the Albemarle perspective is that little bump, if that's what it is going to also affect the next 2 years allocations because of the 3-year window. So that's just something to know about.
Yeah, I think in looking at the statistics too, for our digital circulation, of course, was the busiest branch during fiscal year 21, and over 60% of those checkouts were from Albemarle patrons. I think Wendy, you had your hand up?
Yep, I see that. Thank you, Wendy.
She's muted.
Wendy, did you have a question? You're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
David, I noticed in one of your correspondence, you mentioned that when you were discussing with the counties or the powers that be and explaining some of our idea from funding the minimum wage increase and whatnot, that they said that their attention and focus was also going to be on that item, on the increase in the wages. Did you talk with Louisa?
Yeah, most of that came from the discussion that I had with the 5 jurisdictions. Everyone except Green was there, and all of them mentioned personnel as being a main concern in their budgets for next year. So they didn't all necessarily say that it was going to be in the form of a minimum wage adjustment for their own staff, but they said that they were expecting to have to carve out a larger chunk of their budgets for next year to address recruitment and retention of their own staff, their own workforce, I should say.
Okay, so they were at least on the same page and seemed supportive.
Yeah, I think all 5 jurisdictions are seeing similar issues when it comes to hiring and retaining employees right now. So each of them will approach that a bit differently, I think, but they are all aware of kind of the labor difficulties that organizations are facing right now.
And were they appreciative of the library's early move on that and our, what I think is generous way to support that transition?
I think there was some concern that JMRL not be digging a hole here, that we're not going to deplete this general fund in order to make this plan work. So that was raised, and then there was also it was raised from one of the jurisdictions that when I told them that this is going to by nature create compression over time because it's going to change the pay scale, there was some interest in having an overall salary study that the jurisdictions could then make a choice of whether or not to fund an entire salary overhaul rather than just focusing on minimum wage. And while I think that's a great idea, the work involved in that was not going to happen before budgets were due for fiscal year 21. So JMRL is going to be looking to our jurisdictions to try to roll that into year 2 of this, so we could at least bring to the jurisdictions like, here's what it would cost to entirely fix our salary schedule, which of course is a moving target. You know, that every year that changes what's needed there, and it doesn't go down, it goes up. So next year we hope to have at least some movement on that. So there was a question about that came from one of the jurisdictions too. Those are the 2 main questions that we got in presenting this minimum wage plan. So once we assured everybody that this was not going to wipe out the general fund for JMRL, the question became, well, you know, we don't want to do a 3-year plan and then have to do another 3-year plan after that. But that appears to be at least partially likely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions? Mike, go.
I have kind of 3 or 4 questions. I see the allocation and I know that comes from a formula, but is it correct that the kind of worksheet, so to speak, of where that allocation came from is not part of this document?
It's not correct.
Okay.
You're talking about the percentages?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And how does so I don't know if it's an accounting standard or not, but it might be interesting to have a link to, here's the worksheet of where these numbers came from.
Okay.
How does the digital circulation play into that calculation?
It's in your the monthly handouts for the board.
Well, let me ask the question differently. Does the digital circulation affect the regional allocation?
It affects only the regional allocation, yes.
And then, if we go to page 22 of the packet, which is the last, the branch tech services state operating expenses book, is that the materials cost of digital materials?
Scroll away.
Yeah.
No, this is the book budget from materials budget, I should say, from the State Library of Virginia.
Right.
So this is the projected expenditure next year from state aid, basically.
For all materials.
For all materials.
And we
yes.
don't see a breakdown of physical versus digital.
No, we could get that. We have all that data, but it's not included in the projected budget for next year.
But this is also, so where does this, and again, I'm just not familiar with the budget sheet, where that is not, those aren't regional. Those are library costs, but they're funded from this state aid source.
Correct.
Where do we see the income here that would match back to that?
The only other place that you would see that, I think, is on the overall operational budget page.
First page.
Yeah, which is the library admin local. Is that right, AJ?
For
the book budget, is that in here?
Should be library admin state on that. You're right.
No, that's not it. That's books.
So the books, it's not in the library admin local, it's in the library admin state, which is where you were.
Oh, that's where I was. Yeah, so that's the place that is reflected, Mike, the place that you were looking at.
That's where we see, that's the only place that's notated. That's the question.
You can also see the actuals on that from the last few years on page 7 of the packet, I believe. Is this in here?
Because the branches are not being asked to contribute because it's funded by the state. I don't believe that. That's
That's
the
correct.
reason it's not on page 6, that first page.
Okay, so it just doesn't appear as a
Because
cost here.
it's being
We're not
funded by
charging them
the
for that,
state,
correct.
so we're not asking LMRL to kick in any money.
So that
Right.
amount that's on that last page there
Yeah.
is the amount that the state has told us to expect in state aid for next year.
Right, but it just doesn't show up. I guess the first page is not the full budget. It's
No,
just
correct.
the regional
It's the
cost.
regional cost, it's the jurisdictional cost, yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
And the
yes.
Full, bottom lines or
So you
somewhere
can
else.
see on the page right after that,
Yeah, that's the,
on page 7, that should include
everything.
all the costs, but it doesn't include any income coming in. This is just the budgeted expenditures for next year.
Right. Okay.
And the last few years of actuals, so what we actually spent out, and then the current year's budget. So it's got a few columns of data there.
Right. Okay. And once again, I'm just trying to understand the costs involved with this digital circulation.
Mhm.
There's a technology infrastructure, which is sort of regional. And there's materials which are covered by state. I'm just trying to understand conceptually, why does the usage pattern of that stuff that's sort of fixed costs, I almost think of, why does that have a big effect on the regional cost allocation? Does the
Well,
question
I
make
mean,
sense a little
there's
bit?
still work associated with each of those items. There's
Yeah.
selection,
Yeah.
there's cataloging, there's work that happens in order to get that material to you. It's not Netflix that you just turn on and it's
Yeah.
available for you. So there's behind the scenes work that has to happen there. So we're following the terms of the regional agreement, which says, what's checked out, basically.
Okay.
The only place that on this sheet here, the only place that has a monetary effect is in the share of regional costs. So you could consider that, a technical services or administration cost, basically. This is the only place that number affects a particular jurisdiction's share of costs. Everything else is either a local cost, so the Nelson Library is paid for by Nelson County, and their circulation doesn't matter there, or it's a shared Charlottesville Albemarle cost. And those digital materials don't come into play.
David, I think it's important to highlight one thing you just said there as well, that the regional agreement is what dictates that, and it views those digital selections and in-person selections the same, correct?
Well, my guess is that it says items checked out,
Right.
because it's 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't think it gets into a detailed, like, here's how you should treat this, here's how you should treat that.
But so you're basically saying, though, that you don't sort of randomly assign the digital items to something like Central or Northside.
Correct,
You
yeah.
have it just in the technical services.
Yeah, and the only thing
So
it
this just
does-
reflects that 56% of the items checked out from the Central branch, whatever.
Right, it doesn't impact that, it only impacts the overall share of like what Albemarle patrons, this very top line here, 59.20.
Right.
Here's the share of usage of JMRL's collection by over 3 years by each of these jurisdictions.
Okay.
So this number includes their share of usage of digital circulation by patrons who live in Albemarle County and Charlottesville and Nelson and Louisa.
Good enough for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, this is, these are
Well,
Well, if you
things that you're
explain
gonna have to be able
if
to
you also
answer
have to
too.
explain it to somebody else, I think
Yeah.
you have to understand.
right. I mean, I definitely understand that there's costs involved with the digital component. The question in my mind, that might be a small bucket and there's a big bucket. And now if there's an outsized distribution one way or the other of the smaller bucket, it's affecting perhaps the bigger bucket in a way where the total cost is more than just the percentage cost, the absolute number from the smaller bucket. And that just gets into how the numbers the math actually works
exactly. And
out.
I could definitely see this as being something that when the regional agreement is opened again, all 5 jurisdictions are going to want to have spelled out better than it was 10 years ago when this wasn't, it wasn't
We didn't have
as big of
digital.
a factor.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Now this budget, since I'm obviously not that amazing at reading Excel, it includes all the things that we talked about in the personnel committee. If that's correct.
Yes.
It looks like the bookmobile took a.
Yes, so all the requests that came from managers that the personnel committee reviewed and prioritized are included in this budget. So if we have issues funding this budget, then we would go back and revisit those
Great.
individually.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Sounds like maybe we're out of questions. Are we feeling like we're ready to vote? Do I hear a motion? If anybody would like to vote on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023?
I move that we vote on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Thank you very much. David, do you want to do a roll vote on this one? Can we just do an all in favor?
That probably makes sense.
What was that?
That makes sense to me to have a roll call vote.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's see. How are we listed here on the Meredith?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Michael?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Jim?
Hi.
Have I missed anybody? I know we've got a few absentees here.
Don't
Oh,
forget
Alita over
Wendy-
there. Did I say? I'm sorry.
I'm back.
Alita, hi.
And Wendy.
Hi.
And Wendy?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I was just looking at the present from last time, I guess, not the full. Okay. Thank you all very much. Sorry about that. It sounds like the motion passes. Let's see. Old business, I believe we were up to on our agenda then. Michael, would you like to discuss policy 2.2 at all before we take a vote on it?
Yes. So
Thank you very
we,
much.
if I recall correctly, we read this at the last meeting. And what were the changes? I'm not seeing red lines here. David, do you remember the general?
I think we added,
We talked about red lines last time.
yeah,
There's red here. I don't know.
yeah, let me
Oh, yeah.
look at the one that's in that, maybe the.
Yeah,
colorful
there's
one.
definitely red if that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a wording change, enhance instead of develop. There's in, okay, great, there you go.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, in bullet 5, just being more clear about what the standards, where you find these standards, and then talk about the, mention the library degree scholarship. So nothing conceptually brand new here, just some clarifications and enhancements.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any last questions about this? I think we had a pretty good conversation on it last time. Would anybody like to make a motion to adopt policy section 2.2 as presented?
I'll do that.
Thank you very much, Alita.
I'd like to make the motion to adopt policy staff training development policies 2.2? Yeah, 2.2.
Thank you. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I believe the motion will carry there. Let's see. Michael, do you want to set up our next policy discussion here?
So we, at last month's board meeting, we had a policy committee report, and we described that the policy committee had updated and come up with proposed versions of these two group visits and emergencies policies. And that's just was part of our regular scheduled review. At the policy committee meeting, we didn't do a first reading last month because we wanted to give the managers, since these are sort of both intersect with day-to-day operations, a chance to weigh in. And the policy committee made sort of a contingent recommendation that failing, substantial input or changes from the managers that we were ready to recommend. So the first of these, I think there was no changes or suggestions from the managers. So emergencies, we've added, this is a policy level document. We are sort of covering our bases as from a governance standpoint to make sure that staff is fulfilling a responsibility to have emergency action plans. And so the details of that would be a sort of a policy document or an operational document. And basically this just functions as our guidance to David and his staff that, hey, we want to make sure you've got emergencies covered. The original language in the black gave some sort of high level priorities for that. And now we're just giving sort of an extra detail. Hey, we want you to have a plan that incorporates these priorities. And that's the purpose of this. Any comments or questions? Okay, so we can present this for a vote next month. If there's any thoughts or feedback in the meantime, we'll have an opportunity to discuss before a vote.
Thank you very much. That seems very straightforward, and I think we can do that next month.
Okay, the next one looks complicated, but it's not really. This was, again, scheduled tenure review. We want to welcome everyone, which might from time to time include groups. And the thing that's kind of different here, in discussion, we sort of identified a distinction between some groups that are just visiting as a group, and some groups need sort of a dedicated assistance of some sort, a library tour, or other sort of, maybe it's a reference type of group visit. And so we wanted to be welcoming for all groups, but if you need a specific sort of attention, we just have limitations in terms of staff and facilities and so forth. And we just ask the public to kind of work with us and help us manage that by filling out a form and giving us a heads up, basically, so that we can plan for that. Or if we need to, say, well, we've already got 3 groups that day, can you come the following Friday instead of this Friday? So really, before it kind of said, everybody, we want you to tell us in advance. Now we're sort of making that distinction of, do you need dedicated services or not? And just communicating that there are limitations, that we may need to, do some traffic shaping from time to time if necessary. Just a heads up on setting the groundwork for that, or the expectations, I suppose, in terms of the public. This also went through the committee, and then the manager's review, I think, that's why we see the red and the green.
Yeah.
There's kind of a continuous improvement from a couple of sources here.
So the green is new since the board, since the policy committee discussed. That came from the managers, and one of them was accepting, they really like Kathy's suggestion of requiring adequate supervision, and the other one was a new thing, but it wasn't a substantial change, so.
Right, so the committee did see the green by email, and there was nobody who said, well, we need to discuss it back as a committee. So we were able to maintain the recommendation to bring it to the full board, is what we're doing now. So same thing, we're open now for comments or questions.
Alita, I think you had one there.
Yeah, I did. Could you bring it back down? Okay, and it's just a switch. On that the second paragraph, the very last line, it says, ask that the group fill out a library group visit form or contact their local branch. I would say contact their local branch and fill out, so that you could, so that the library would have some kind of physical piece of information. So not just the and, I'd have it and rather than an or.
That makes sense to me, Alita. The only thing when you fill out the form, it does contact the local branch.
Oh,
You know,
it
that
does?
method of- Yeah, it will send, so if somebody wanted to do this for Nelson, they would fill out the form and Susan would get it. You know, so my only question is, does that, but I hear what you're saying, if somebody didn't fill out the form and they just called, then Susan might like to have that record of it, as you're suggesting, for later on.
Right.
So I think the intent that may have been to make sure it's accessible to everyone. The form is a link, computerized link as is. Now, I'm sure there's a paper version if you came into the branch. But would it be the case, David, if someone just called, that probably procedurally, whoever's fielding that would fill out the form?
Yeah, they would
Call.
keep track of it. I'm not sure
Yeah.
that they would fill out that form or if they would use their own, you know.
But
internal track.
you could procedurally say, hey, that's the way you handle it by
Yeah.
filling out the form so that it's consistent.
Sure.
Yeah.
I did have one question. It looks like we dropped the definition of a group from 10 to 5. What was the thought behind that?
I think we removed the requirement. It says a visitant that may require, I'm sorry, in the first line here in the second paragraph, to ensure a positive library experience, the library requires advance notification when it was 10. So we did get a request early on in this discussion from one of our branches to consider groups of being 5 or more if they require. So not like my family of 5 comes in, but my Boy Scout troop of 5 comes in and they need to do, you know, this research project and they need to engage the staff and use the meeting room and make cards and things like that. So I think it was a compromise there that like we didn't want to require groups of 5 because that's really reasonably small. So we were going to request that for everybody and no longer have the requirement over 10. So it was a bit of a compromise amongst staff, I think, in discussing this.
But it doesn't apply to immediate families. Is that what you're saying?
No, it would have to be a group that was looking for, you know, for the special services. So an immediate family coming in presumably wouldn't be asking for anything more than a family of 4 would or a family of 2. You know, they might ask to make cards for all the kids, but that's something that we would do for regardless of the size of your family.
Okay. I know that we do have a patron here in Scottsville who brings her 9 children to the library.
Sure.
I want to make sure that we're not writing any policy that requires
They do
any
not need to fill
advance
out
forwarding
form.
on her part.
Every time they come in. So my own question is, what do we want to do with Alita's suggestion there? And or?
I think it's important to keep it as an or for the accessibility purpose there, that letting people know just calling is okay. And if the group visit form link automatically contacts the branch, I think there would be a bit of a benefit to asking people to call to make sure that that contact had been made and confirm it. But I'm kind of weighing that against, you know, then will people who don't have easy computer access feel like, you know, there's a barrier here. And I'm kind of leaning towards keeping it as the or for that reason, but I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has to say. Okay.
Alita, do you have strong feelings
No
about
other
that?
thoughts.
Alita, do you have very strong feelings about that? Does it work as or?
Well, if contacting, I still think that the staff needs a specific piece of paper or, you know, to, you know, so it can have a paper trail. So, you know, I can, you know, if they contact the library and the librarian fills out the paper, then, you know.
I have a question. How do you get the group visits form?
It's available from our website.
From the website?
Yeah. So I think that goes to Mike's point about the accessibility of it.
Right, so you'd have to be online, like, to fill it out.
To fill it out, yeah.
I mean, you could swap the two, say contact their local branch. But
I think as long as the or is in there, it.
yeah. No, I think, yeah, I think that it's really important to respect the fact that a lot of people don't have great internet access, and filling out a form might be an issue for them. You don't want to discourage anybody. from not scheduling a visit. So as long as the managers are okay with the call. He said that went by, it went over the managers went over the.
Thomas, did Wendy have a hand or Wendy?
I think I saw that too. Yeah, Wendy, did you have a question? Comment?
Muted.
Still on mute.
She's muted.
I'm sorry, it was answers.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you, though.
I like going from require to request. That just seems so much more friendly.
It does.
That was one of the goals.
Yeah, that was definitely something we saw right off the bat.
Mhm.
Okay, so this will be presented for a vote next month. If there's no other comments or questions or feedback or tweaks between now and then.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, moving on then. That was our 2 potential readings of policies. Are we all the way to director's report already?
Believe so.
Yep.
David, thank you very much. Would you take it away?
Okay. So pretty big news on our end from the library standpoint is that we have been accepted into the Virginia Department of Health's pilot program to hand out rapid tests, which is, you might have seen in the news. Our neighbors in Fluvanna started last week. And I think by the time the holidays roll around, most of the libraries in Virginia are going to be participating. It's modeled after a program in Ohio. And today, Krista and Brittany and AJ and I sorted through the 2,000 tests that came in to the main library, and we're starting to distribute those to branches, hopefully to have them ready for Wednesday for circulation, or I'm sorry, not for circulation, because these are not library materials.
You don't return them?
We will not count them against any particular jurisdiction. We don't want them back. So they're being given out at each library location. What I heard from Fluvanna last week is that they gave away a few early in the week, and then there were some news stories on local news outlets around here. And then by the end of the week, they were giving away 80 a day. So I have some concerns about the supply.
Yeah.
They're coming directly from the VDH through their delivery system. So it's not coming through FedEx or the mail or anything like that. There's a person with a van in Richmond who's driving them around, and they came on Friday and Monday. Initially, I had ordered 288 until I heard that feedback from Fluvanna, and I called back and got basically the most that we can. So starting on Wednesday, these will be available via contactless curbside pickup at each location. So we're not giving them away at service desks, only outside the library. We ask that people call in advance to make an appointment if possible so that they can come in, swing by, pick them up and go. These do require a few things. The kits themselves are one of the common manufacturers, but because this is a VDH program, it requires a telehealth component. So there are no instructions that come with it. You get it, you take it out, and you need to use an internet connected device with a phone in order to take the test and get the results of the test. So while I see that as a barrier in some places, we are making Wi-Fi available in our, outside of our buildings for that. Staff are very clear that they cannot answer any questions about these. We are simply a delivery mechanism here. There are numbers we're applying labels to each of them that has an 800 number to call the state and information about how to sign up for the telehealth version of it. They're not to come in the building at all. We don't want the discards either. So, people can basically take them and go, and library staff will only help them to get their materials and take them out. So I see this as a great thing that JMRL can do to help our community. Especially around the holidays. The feedback that I've gotten from some of our peers was that a lot of the people picking up kits were doing it for travel purposes. They weren't doing it because they were symptomatic. They were doing it because they were going to visit somebody, or they were having somebody come to visit them, and they could, reasonably feel safe in doing so. So I expect that we'll see a bump on Wednesday, and then again on the tail end of Thanksgiving as people are returning back, and then likely, while it's a new thing, quite a bit of interest in it. Hopefully it will level out a bit and then come back up around Christmas. So You might have seen this in the Washington Post. There was talk from the VDH about this. They put out a press release that got picked up by a lot of places. But JMRL has joined that pilot. The pilot program goes through December, and then they're hoping to roll this out full time in January for any library that's interested. So that's a big thing. Go ahead, Alita.
I was just wondering, how are you distributing these? You know, what percentage does each of the jurisdictions get?
Evenly per branch at this point. So we sent out today boxes of 72, I think, 72, and we sent 2 to each branch. So that's 144 tests to each branch minus the bookmobile at this point. Marion and I still need to figure out whether or not that's a viable way to deliver these. We are expecting, especially in rural communities, when the word gets out, that supply will go pretty quickly. So we've got on hand several hundred more to go back out, and then we'll be weekly reordering from the state.
And I know we have some limitations to where the bookmobile can go, but maybe a humanitarian cause like this would be a great way to break the ice and help get it out into some of the rural jurisdictions as well.
Yeah, it's more a matter of how to do the contactless
Yeah.
delivery than it is, where the bookmobile is going to be, because it definitely will be in areas that could use this even on its regular schedule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's a new thing and a surprise for you all. So any other questions about that pilot program?
So people don't have to, they have to call a number and then do the test. They can do the test in their car. They don't have to mail anything in.
No, it's a rapid test. So it's a 15-minute antigen test. It's not the full PCR test. So it's not like I'm 100% sure, whatever I think it's like 85% or so.
Right.
It's the same one that you could go to a pharmacy now and pick up.
Right, but because they're on the phone with VDH, then that becomes, if they are positive, for instance, then that becomes a count in the area. So
I believe that the actual counts in the area are PCR tests only. So likely, if there's a positive, they would be instructed to go get a test, a full PCR test. Yeah, initially I had that same thought when I saw Fluvanna's numbers go up. We had tied it into these being available, but I actually think, looking at the VDH's information, that they're only counting PCR tests.
How is the community being made aware of JMRL passing these out? I might have missed something.
No, we haven't made any announcements yet, Kathy. This happened very quickly. We only the first supply from the state became available for libraries last week. JMRL was a little slow to get on board. Our managers wanted to talk about it, make sure that we could do this safely, basically without putting our own staff in any sort of precarious positions. So we didn't sign on to become a member of this pilot until Thursday, and then the materials showed up today. So we're going to be putting out a press release in social media tomorrow. And I have flyers, if there's anybody who's interested in putting them in places where there are people that you think would be interested, I can send you those. I'd love to do that.
I believe there was a story about Fluvanna.
Yeah, Fluvanna got a lot of coverage last week in the local media. Now, keep in mind though, the library is closed Thursday and Friday this week. So we're going to be open for the Wednesday pre-travel, although a lot of people will be traveling, and then on the tail end of this. But we couldn't get the materials out fast enough to move any quicker than that.
Well, I want to say thank you for being responsive to the feedback you heard from peer communities. I think that this is going to be really popular, and the more tests we can get out, the better.
Any other questions about the not circulating, handing out, giving away COVID tests from the VDH? In terms of JMRL's own COVID response, we remain pretty steadily hoping that we're moving towards low or moderate rates of transmission in all 5 jurisdictions. Currently, none of them are in the bottom 2, which would make a change in our staff masking. But things are trending in the right direction for most of them. So we're hoping to be able to make changes as soon as we can there.
David, for the dissemination of the test, I really love that you're going to be doing that. I have a friend who works at DC Public Schools, and she seems like she's getting COVID tests like every other week. So I just thought it was, just a nice way to, to support the community. It seems like a perfect thing to be doing. So I'm glad. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. let's see, we're doing a virtual version of Lorenzo Dickerson's program. He's going to be showing the film free and open to the public on December 9th in the evening, followed by a brief, hopefully briefer Q&A. And we also just today got the first copies of the DVDs of that, which will be added to the library's collection. So for those of you that didn't get a chance to see Lorenzo's film about the first 100 years of library service in our community, that DVD will be available for circulation. We're also going to be recording the virtual program, posting it to our YouTube page so that you can watch at your leisure.
It's my ferocious guard beagle. I'm sorry.
Doesn't like Zoom meetings.
No.
And then last thing I wanted to say is that I recently have been added to Virginia Public Library Directors Association's executive board, representing our Mountain 6 region. And I heard from the executive board today that they're working on a statement about censorship because there's been a lot in the news about school libraries especially and censorship. And so I reminded all JMRL staff last week about JMRL's very robust reconsideration policy for any offering. So this board enacted that several years ago. So it goes for books, materials of any sort, displays, programs, basically anything that the library is offering to the public. So I'll remind the board of the same, that JMRL has an excellent and very robust reconsideration policy that does get used. There's a very thorough procedure there. So if you get calls, because there's been a lot of raised awareness about censorship in libraries and about questioning of materials, if you get a patron request for reconsideration, remember there's a procedure there and you can bring it to me and it will start with the library staff. It ends with the board if the patron is not satisfied with the first rounds of review. So if you get anybody calling you or emailing or stopping you in the street, it doesn't have to be the official, request. If somebody says, hey, I saw this book in the library, I don't think it should be there, or why don't you have this book in the library, or this book shouldn't be here, it should be there, then you can point them my way, or you can point them to JMRL's reconsideration policy. So I just wanted to get that on your radar while this is kind of in the zeitgeist right now.
Congratulations, David.
Congratulations, David.
Thank you so much for doing that service. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it's like a congratulations type thing.
Oh, of course. That's wonderful news.
It's more of a one more
That's another
thing.
thing to do.
Oh, one more, sure.
They let you do it on Zoom.
Another hat to wear.
And that's all that I have to report for now, Thomas.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing for us, David. It is very much appreciated. And I appreciate the refresher there on the policy review or on the materials review policy there. That's actually a segue I'll gladly take to one thing I want to mention here in other matters. We've had a difficult situation locally here in Scottsville that I won't say too much about, but it centers around unwelcome communication with the public. And it's made me realize that it's important for me to say to you all before it needs to be said, that I take seriously, along with the responsibility of having to speak for the board here, an obligation to be out in front of those kinds of things. And if anybody is feeling pressured or approached in a way, in a place or a manner that they're uncomfortable with, please always feel free to redirect people my way. Or to your elected local officials. We are each put here to do a job as appointed committee members by our elected officials of our municipality. And I think that engenders them with some responsibility for us as well. But don't forget what David said about internal reviews that we have. And please know that resources are there between the staff, myself, and the elected members of our jurisdiction. I want to thank all of you guys for all of the work that you're doing. I think this kind of volunteer effort is incredibly important in our communities, and I want you to know that you're all supported in the way that you do it. So thank you all very much. And if nobody has any other matters,
The tech committee.
oh yes. Oh, right. Thank you very much.
So I think, and we could probably do this offline, but Wendy, you're interested in calling the technology committee to meet, is that correct?
Yes, and I started to figure out a time because Michael had a good point, and I think he was right on target that we need to regroup and look at some of the items. So I'm inadvertently sent Tony the reply on email, and that should have gone to Mike. So I apologize for that. But I just wanted to make sure that Mike knows that we're working on it, and we'll do it through email, okay? We don't have to
Okay,
take
that's
time
fine.
now, just so that that's in our radar and we'll figure it out, okay?
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Thomas, I also wanted to remind everyone that the December board meeting is 2 weeks early.
Yes, thank you.
It's
Oh, that's
so
important.
it's 3 weeks from today on the 13th at the Northside branch. So the board voted on that last year in order to try to avoid the week of Christmas, I believe.
Yes, we did. And thank you for the reminder, everybody. Big circles around December 13th on your calendar there. And of course, we'll be continuing the hybrid format. So if you're traveling or otherwise unavailable, please see if you can join us on Zoom. Yeah, okay. Future agenda items, we'll have final review and vote, it sounds like, on 2 policies, 4.231 on group visits and 5.2 on emergencies. Any other things that we should throw on there, David?
Yeah, we should have committee reports from both the policy committee and the technology committee.
Okay, wonderful. But we will try to be efficient about it there at our last meeting of the calendar year. And yeah, let me just say again, thank you all very much for being here today, for the vote on the budget. That's important. And thank you for everything that you do. If there are no other questions, and I'll pause for a moment here in case there are. Well, then I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Take care, travel safe. Thank you all very much. We will adjourn here at 4:31. Meeting is adjourned, yes.
Oh, 4:31.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Okay, you too.
Happy Thanksgiving.
David, good to see you too, and it's good to be seen.
Good, good. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Coming.
May not even be today. It was just